I'm Andrea Lutz. We do start with this afternoon. The report of a missing woman out of Missoula. Authorities are looking for the public's help in locating Genesis Latoya Springer. The 35-year-old was last seen at the end of her shift at the Missoula Fresh Market on Broadway on August 21st. Genesis is a black woman who is 5 feet 5 inches tall, 150 pounds. She has shoulder-length dark hair that may have red highlights in it. She was last seen getting into a newer, smaller yellow SUV that possibly had black rims in the store's parking lot. If you do have information about her, you're encouraged to call police. Hurricane Laura arrived overnight as a dangerous Category 4 hurricane. The storm is threatening thousands of people with ferocious winds and torrential rain. Courtney Dubowski has the latest from Galveston.
Hurricane Laura ripped buildings to shreds as it slammed ashore overnight in Louisiana, not far from the Texas border.
Time to take cover, time to take cover.
The powerful storm packed sustained winds of 150 miles an hour.
There it goes.
Flipping over an RV and dumping over 10 inches of rain in some places. In Lake Charles, Louisiana, debris is scattered everywhere. Property damage is extensive. That's where Jeannie Adair rode out the storm.
I've never experienced one this intense. They say this is going to be the storm of a lifetime, and I can see that it's probably, that's an accurate statement for sure.
Forecasters predicted a massive, unsurvivable storm surge that could flood people as far as 40 miles inland. But early reports reveal it may not have been as bad as expected.
It's probably less than 10 feet right now, which is a good sign. But again, we're also hearing heavy wind damage to structures.
As Laura trucks north, inspectors here in Texas and Louisiana will head out to assess the damage. Hundreds of thousands have lost power.
Rescue teams are involved right now, making sure that they're restoring power, restoring and protecting lives, and we are already going to begin the rebuilding process.
Authorities caution the storm is still a threat. They say it could be days before power is fully restored and all the floodwater recedes. Courtney Zabowski, CBS News, Galveston, Texas.
So far, there are no reported deaths in the United States from that storm. Our Ed McIntosh tracking some storms of our own, but it's always kind of crazy to see images like that from a hurricane.
It sure is. You see the devastation of that. You realize that occasional thunderstorm maybe isn't quite as big a deal, but we do want to keep an eye on eastern Montana into the Dakotas for today because we have the potential for storms to create larger sized hail, gusty winds, and some heavy rain. And we haven't talked about those possibilities for a while as we've been under this very hot and dry weather pattern. Already some showers and thunderstorms, even during the overnight hours, have continued to develop, and we've even seen some hail reports from the eastern edge of Wyoming into South Dakota, up to about the size of golf balls, even through the morning hours. Take a closer look at the forecast through the weekend coming up in a few minutes.
Montana's most recent stats on unemployment show many community numbers are looking up. The state of Montana's rate is about 6.4 right now. According to Job Service Missoula, certain sectors are quick to get back on their feet. Areas like construction, software, and healthcare are all growing industries. The National Labor Exchange posted 1,200 jobs within a 25-mile radius of Missoula. Staff are interested to see how Montana stacks up against other states.
Since April, we've had over 42,000 jobs that have been added to the Montana economy. So that's good numbers. Those are numbers that are trending upward. They're at least telling us that we are going the right direction, that even though COVID is still there, we're learning to work around it, and we're doing what we can to get people back to work and to help these businesses thrive.
And here are some new COVID numbers to share with you. Montana's added 143 new COVID cases just today. Active cases now close to hitting the 1,800 mark. Montana's performed some 2,300 new COVID tests in the last 24 hours. And Montana's death toll when it comes to COVID-19 still stands at 98. University of Montana officials say the workspaces are being cleaned and even more thoroughly than before as an extra precaution after a faculty member tested positive for COVID-19. The employee works within the School of Theater and Dance. They're quarantining, and the exposure, they say, happened off campus. It was the result of community spread. UM officials say the pandemic is adding new challenges, but they're ready to handle them.
it does mean that we've changed learning modalities for the students in the classes for the next few weeks while that person is recovering. And so that's always a challenge when you have to change a plan right away. But we've done enough contingency planning that this was something that we were prepared for.
Some dance and theater classes are being conducted in a tent outside for a little bit more space. Well, the simplest COVID test yet has just been approved by the FDA. It's the first rapid test that doesn't need special computers to get results. The 15-minute test will sell for $5. It's based on the same technology used for flu and strep throat tests. However, the FDA says tests like these can be less accurate. The new test still requires a nasal swab from a healthcare worker. A Montana state lawmaker says a photo taken of him in front of a framed swastika is a shameful political game being played out by his Democratic opponent. Republican candidate for House District 21 Ed Buttrey is clapping back at candidate Jamie Horn over a photo taken at a monthly Cascade County Republicans meeting. The image hangs in the conference room at the VFW. Horn says he merely acquired the photo and says that in an email he's disgusted by a framed swastika hanging proudly on the wall. In response, Buttrey said he imagines a spectator at a meeting snapped that picture for the purpose of discrediting his political image. The room at the VFW is filled with collections of World War II memorabilia. Flathead County Sheriff's officers are asking for the public's help in solving a 17-year-old cold case. In 2003, deputies found male human skeletal remains near Marion, and officials say the bones could lead to the identification of the John Doe. However, it's been decades. A gun and a backpack were also found nearby at the scene, and the case has always been discussed because investigators have DNA. They just don't have the right match.
A lot of people in their investigation or their time at the sheriff's office always wanted to kind of see the closure as well. So people have worked on it throughout the years to pick up, different information and facts about it. And it's never really been closed. It's always just been waiting for new information.
And the Flathead County Sheriff is also looking for information from anyone who was around the Marion area during the late 1990s to about 2003. We do have more news ahead on the new news, including a story that you might say is a royal flush. A cell phone returned after being found in a toilet. Wow. But first, Ed is back in with a look at that statewide weather forecast.
Macintosh.
Welcome back to the new news. Temperatures are mainly into the 70s to mid 80s region-wide, but check out readings already Butte at 60 degrees, 68 for you in Dillon. Then it'll cross the eastern plains, mid 70s to mid 80s, 84 right now in Jordan, one of the warmer readings that we're getting. But you see a few showers starting to develop, and they're fairly widespread. A lot of this is going to concentrate on southern and eastern Montana through the afternoon. The good news is the extra moisture has been helping to clear things out a little bit, and all of the air quality readings that we're getting here as of midday are in the good category, either the greens or the yellows that you see. No unhealthies this time around. We're also looking at the humidity starting to go up, and while it's still fairly low across the northern tier of the state, this is going to produce some concerns for wildfires later in the day, but the chance of showers and thunderstorms that will actually create some heavy rain along with gusty winds and hail possible once we start looking into southeast Montana and then over towards the Dakotas. We're still under that strong upper level jet that's continuing to pull up some of that warmer air and a little more moisture, and it still is bringing some of the smoke into the region, but most of it staying in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. The cloud cover is actually having a bigger influence on here today as well. You notice that it's not quite making it up into the northern portion of the state. So here's the setup for this afternoon. Still some of that smoke as this next disturbance starts to pull into the scene. It could create some drier thunderstorms, and that's the fire risk you see in the highlighted areas around Glasgow, extending over towards Malta south as we start looking into some of northeastern Montana. And then the yellow shaded areas show where we have the potential for stronger storms that again have the potential for gusty winds, hail, heavy rain. That will swing through the area during the late afternoon and evening hours. Sunshine tomorrow. Temperatures temperatures are going to be mainly into the 70s to mid 80s, which is pretty close to average for this time of the year, and a big warm up still in store for Saturday. And all of a sudden the readings are into the mid to upper 80s to mid 90s by later in the day, the warmest temperatures into the eastern plains. But once this cold front sinks through Saturday night into Sunday, we're going to see that sharp transition and the temperatures really start to settle in. So today we're looking at a lot of 70s and 80s across the map, a little warmer across the eastern plains, some fire concerns in the pink shaded areas, and stronger storms possible through areas of southern Montana extending into northern Wyoming and then eventually into South Dakota, where they could really start to gain some energy by later in the afternoon and evening. Some of those stronger cells certainly will put out some hail for later in the day. 40s, 50s for the overnight lows. Things get much quieter overnight as that high pressure area builds in tomorrow. We're mainly in the mid 70s to mid 80s, sunny, warm and dry tomorrow. Kind of a little break with temperatures that are pretty typical for this time of the year. Readings in the 80s in western Montana with lots of sun the next couple of days, but watch how the temperatures drop sharply Sunday into Monday. The overnight temperatures stay mainly in the 40s. For Great Falls and Helena, again, we're looking at temperatures a little bit of a spike on Saturday to around 90 degrees, but then the sharp contrast as we get later into the weekend, a few isolated storms to go along with that. Butte and Bozeman also looking at temperatures a little bit on the cool side, especially in the mornings, but that big drop in the temperatures could push readings into the 30s by early Monday morning. And Glendive and Billings also seeing that spike in the temperatures on Saturday before the sharp contrast into the early part of next week. There's a look at the weather. Back to you.
Thanks, Ed. Cell phones are easily lost and can seldom be found, especially if they do fall into a toilet at a campsite. But as MTN's Sam Hoyle shows us, sometimes it takes the right person with a little bit of creativity.
It was that exact scene at a vault toilet very similar to this one near Holland Lake on the Flathead National Forest, where one Helena woman did exactly that. The phone fell into the vault toilet and she assumed it was lost. That was until the sanitation company that cleans out the toilet found it.
I was kind of in shock. I was like, whoa, there's a phone. So, looks like a nice one. And then I told Cody, he goes, oh, okay. And then so we tried not to suck it up or whatever. And then I told him to get the grabbers. So we have some grabbers that can grab like bottles and stuff. And so he grabbed them out. Cody grabbed them out.
So when the crew over at A1 Sanitation found the phone, they decided, you know what, let's see if we can get this thing to work. So they sanitized it, they let it dry out for a few days, and then decided they would just plug it in to see if it would even work. And lo and behold, it powered on. And that's just when their search began.
I went up to the Verizon store and stood in line and waited and got up to the front there, and they said without the owner, they can't access the phone whatsoever. So I called Apple. Basically, I got the same runaround with them. Then Tanner called around and got the great idea of pulling the SIM card out. And he's got an iPhone, so he was able to assist with that.
And once the crew did swap out the SIM card and they were able to call the rightful owner of the phone, she was a bit surprised to find out it was even still alive.
When she finally called me back, I told her who I was, told her, we found this phone in the Forest Service vault. And her initial reaction was, well, you guys must have to pump out toilets because that's the last place I saw that phone.
So while the crew at A1 Sanitation might not service your neck of the woods, they said the reason there are signs up to not throw trash into vault toilets is because they said they still have to fish it out, or whatever crew is servicing the vault toilets has to fish those out. And it makes a tough job even tougher. Reporting in Helena, Sam Hoyle, MTN News.
But the big question is, did she really use it afterward? Okay, your latest Ag News is coming up next.
Work. Welcome back for today's Farm and Ranch News. Spring counts of male greater sage grouse, well, they have increased slightly this year across their western strongholds, possibly indicating the end of a 3-year decline. That's according to a report by the WyoFile, where wildlife officials in Idaho, Montana, and Oregon have reported small increases seen on breeding ground leks this spring. Wyoming reported a small drop of 0.3 birds per lek, a 1.5% decline, which Game and Fish officials said indicates a leveling out of a 3-year slide in the cowboy state. Together, the 4 states hold about 76% of the world's greater sage grouse. the population dropped an estimated 44% in key western states and provinces between 2016 and 2019. Driving worries about the imperiled bird that was once a candidate for protection under the Endangered Species Act. While the 2020 results are encouraging, the one-year uptick does not make a trend, according to researchers. In other news now, a second installment of the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program is still on tap to be unveiled in early September, according to Secretary of Agriculture Perdue. Perdue said that the $14 billion in authority currently available to the agency under the Commodity Credit Corporation will be used in CFAP 2. USDA has been criticized for the dates it has used to determine payments under the initial CFAP effort. Perdue suggested one reason that the April 15th cutoff was used was to get money out the door quickly. He said USDA is looking at the cutoff date going forward to help producers. And also, he highlighted moves by the department to cover more commodities under the program and their recent decision to issue the final 20% payments to producers under the initial CFAP effort. Just a reminder, there is still funding available for the initial CFAP funding program. Producers are encouraged to contact their FSA office to apply. Don't go too far, we'll have more after this. China's importation of pork has hit a record volume in July, more than doubling to 430,000 metric tons from a year earlier. Chinese importers have been bringing in huge volumes of meat this year to fill a large domestic supply shortage after African swine fever killed millions of pigs. For the first half of 2020, China's pork imports reached 2.6 million metric tons, up from just over 1 million tons a year ago. Meanwhile, China's July beef imports reached 210,000 metric tons, and first half 2020 shipments were pegged at 1.2 million metric tons. And finally today, as farmers and ranchers battle drought, grasshoppers, and wildfires this summer here in Montana, producers near the coastal regions of Louisiana and Texas spent much of the week moving tens of thousands of cattle, horses, and other livestock to higher ground to avoid flooding levels before Hurricane Laura made landfall early Thursday morning. This is just another example of ranchers doing everything they can to care and protect their livestock, no matter the circumstance. Our thoughts are with everyone being impacted by the hurricane this week. That's today's Farm and Ranch News.
A new campaign emphasizing the importance of wearing a mask is popping up on social media and Montana's Crow Reservation. Youth-led organization Baluch Strong is sharing the images on Facebook. They feature reservation youth wearing a mask and a traditional regalia. The organization caught the eye of We Are Montana, but despite the efforts, COVID is still hitting emergency levels across Indian country.
It's due to a number of causes. Our housing crisis, we don't have enough houses for the population, so we're having multi-generational families under the same roof. That contributes to the spread. Some of the houses don't have water or don't have good access to good water, and some houses don't have electricity.
It's always nice to see someone step up and help someone else out.
Absolutely.
Get those masks distributed.
And we've seen a lot of that during this pandemic as well. Yeah. Temperatures today are close to seasonal averages, mid-70s to mid-80s, but all those shaded areas, the greens and the yellows, and then the browns off into South Dakota show we have the potential for strong to severe storms. We do have some fire weather concerns up into northern Montana. Across the board, we're going to be looking at temperatures dropping off sharply Saturday into Sunday, as readings will go from the 80s down to the 60s in most cases, with some cool overnight temperatures as well.
Quite a change happening. Thanks for joining us on the Noon News.